A very warm good evening to our viewers. Welcome to another edition of the Evening Review Show. I'm Matthias Ofiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Well, last week, Namibia celebrated the Heritage Week. Of course, one of the key components or the key fabrics that keeps us together as a society, our heritage that is. We have, for tonight's discussion in studio, Dr. Aaron Nambadi. He's the curator at the City of Windhoek. Mr. Nambadi, good evening and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's indeed a pleasure having you here. Can you just give us a brief rundown? Many people will be wondering, what is Heritage Week? They've been seeing all kinds of activities online and across the city and wondering, what is Heritage Week all about? I mean, we have so many other issues that we are worried about on a daily basis. What is this thing, the Heritage Week, all about?
Yeah, to give you a background, early 90s, there was a decision to celebrate a day to celebrate museums. So it was called a museum day. But then as we continued to celebrate the museum day, to celebrate the work of museums, so we decided to nationalize the whole concept. That's how we decided to have a heritage week where different people and communities celebrate their heritage. I mean, where they come from, who they are, the language they speak, the food they eat, things like that. So that is, in a nutshell, that's Heritage Week. So we have various partners, mostly educational institution and heritage institution across the land. So the whole week, this last week from the 18th to the 24th, we have been celebrating that at various institutions through various means.
How would you say, how has the public's reaction been to it?
This year was one of the best we had. This year was one of the best. Most of our institutions across the land, I'm now speaking as a member of the Museum Association, that we had a high turnout. A lot of people came, especially education institutions. And that was mainly our target, and the youth. So they came here.
Okay. Of course, this year's theme was Heritage and Culture, a rock-solid foundation in Namibian Sign Language. Could you just perhaps briefly break that down to the viewers as to what this is all about and what informed this theme?
Yeah, every year, the Heritage Week organizers or the team uses one of the language as a means to celebrate the theme. So this year we decided to celebrate the sign language as one of the languages. Technically so, because we want to promote it. We want people to acknowledge it. We want people to, because we realize that most of our people with disabilities, especially the ones that cannot speak, when they go to hospitals, for example, they struggle quite a lot. They go to the police stations, they struggle quite. So we wanted to use the language to create awareness. One of our Namibian languages. We have also, I just realized a couple of days ago that sign languages are dependent on their country specific language. But our specific interest this year was to promote the Namibian sign language for communication purposes.
Another aspect would probably be, you've mentioned the struggles that these people face, especially when accessing public facilities is concerned. You are a member of the Museum Association. In terms of preserving while at the same time also advocating for them to be catered for in society, how is it getting along? Are we making traction as a country?
Yeah, I think we are. I sat at a meeting last week where I was informed that the request to nationalize the language is as far as Parliament. So they are busy debating an act of Parliament to pass a law. So for me, I think that's a good thing. I did not know that, and a lot of people did not know that. And I've also realized that as in the museums, especially this last week, a lot of people used that. And we were privileged to view some of the acts that they have done, some of the dramas, for example, by the kids. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So I think as a nation, we have not done much, I can say that, but the thinking is it's at a very advanced stage. And the logistic, therefore, thereafter also is also, I mean, if we are talking about an act of parliament now. And if it's nationalized and legalized, in a couple of years we'll have recognition, and that's what we want as a society. We don't want anybody to be left behind.
Yeah. In terms of nation building, this concept of Heritage Week, the concept itself, how important is it in that regard?
It is a very important week because, I mean, it's a very important issue because most of people think, for example, I'll give you a critical example, which I always give. Most people do not know how the city got to be where we are today. And I will tell you, one of the exhibitions that is now in our museum at the City of Windhoek is the exhibition of the contract laborers. I mean, our great-grandparents used to leave their homes for 6 to 18 months to go on contract, where you are given a contract, a pass, and then they developed what we are looking at today, the infrastructures here. And most people don't know that.
Yeah.
Most people, for example, didn't know that in the 70s, Ovamboland was an independent community, and Kavango was one of the independent communities. So it is our intention to create some of this awareness, and also to teach our little ones on issues related to languages, for example, even the hunting and gathering of food, for example, in the olden days. So we want to create awareness of who we are as a community. We are different, yes, but we are also similar in most cases. You would see, for example, if you go to a funeral and people start singing, you do not need to know the language, for example, but you know that this is a song that everybody sings at funeral. So deliberately we created this week to commemorate and also to preserve some of it, because I know most institutions did a lot of recordings of these events, preparation of food. I know there was a rock painting, I know at some institutions far north. Or far. So deliberately we created this so that we can celebrate who we are as a society, I think.
Of course, last year's theme was unity in diversity. Of course, the diversity in the city is ever obvious, because everyone flocks to the city for better opportunities. What would you say is your office's responsibility to ensure that as a city, these diverse backgrounds which people come from are catered for within the boundaries in the city?
Yeah, we do our part as an institution. I would like to say that we deliberately designed our exhibitions in two folds. One is a permanent exhibition that speaks about early inhabitants of the city. We go as far as 1850, 1870s, because there are slightly some contestations of who was here first, who came, and things like that. But we have it on the record that there were a lot of communities here, Hereros, Nama, Tamaras, who inhabited this city. We got some writings about explorers that passed by, and they have detailed information of who they found and what languages they were speaking. So, and then when it comes to the other exhibition I was speaking about, the temporary exhibition, we want to also be actively involved in real issues, for example. We had an exhibition on the fire emergency, for example. Why we did this is we felt like, look, a lot of people do not acknowledge the services of the city. They think, if the siren is going on, what is that? Maybe a guy is just rushing to go have a Coke or something. But deliberately we put up that exhibition to give you a background of who they are, what type of job they do, and why they are important, the where can they be found. And then we now have the contract laborer exhibition that I was telling you, very detailed exhibition of how people used to migrate, get to the single quarters, Tsumeb, compounds, and Valfes Bay, Swakopmund, all these things. So our institution is deliberately there to educate ourselves, to educate, to tell our communities who are we in terms of, when you speak about the city, how did we get here, for example, and what are we doing as a city. So we research, we do quite a lot of research, and we also do a lot of educational outreach. We invite quite a lot of young people, and it's an exciting space to be, because especially if you have a bit of time, you would learn quite a lot on issues, for example, the old location forced removals, where our people were forcibly removed from current Auckland Park to Katutura, and then the small spaces where they had to live, but yet at the same time have to work.
Yeah.
So I think for us as a city, it's a deliberate initiative to educate, research, and teach ourselves, so that one day we can appreciate the hard work that our parents put in to make sure that we are here today.
Yeah. Dr. Nambadi, we head for a quick break and we'll be back to continue this conversation. To our viewers, we're off for a quick break. Stay tuned.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with the entertainment.
Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Well, welcome back from that short break. Dr. Nambadi, if we have to continue this conversation, from a historical context, we know how the planning structure and the location system came about. You spoke about how our forefathers were moved from the current Auckland Park to where the majority of our people are now in the city. Of course, in terms of uniting the nation, we still see these pockets of segregation within the city. Vambu location, your Damara location, Nama location. But of course, everyone lives everywhere. But that is still engraved in our minds that this area was reserved for these people and this one was reserved for those people. How do we move beyond that?
Yeah, I guess one reason why we struggle to move, quite a lot of reasons, but let me just touch to one, is the economic realities on the ground. So our communities struggle to move, and also the economic struggles that they face. Because I mean, it's not cheap to just let go of your old structure and then start a new structure. So that also is entangled. But to come back to how do we move, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to realize that our diverse identity is what unite us. That's extremely important because, and they also realize that the Constitution now has removed that boundary. So I guess if you can find a balance on the issues related to your economics as a person, and also your appreciations of the diversity of the city, then we can move away from that. I know the issue of racial discrimination is it's an issue on its own, but the law is very clear, and as a community we have to accept that. Other countries do not have what we have, for example. You do not have that peace of mind to do what you want, as long as you respect the next person's diversity. And as a community, we have to find a way to balance, to create a balance in our understanding that because we are different, we are also similar in a way. That is extremely important, and we have to appreciate other cultures. Because one thing I realize, culture does not compete with anybody. Your culture is your culture, my culture is mine. I just have to appreciate the differences in between the two.
Yeah. The other thing is, I'm sure you've traveled to various places where there's a similar setup as to what we have in the city. How different is the work of the city as far as the diversity of its inhabitants is concerned, compared to, say, for instance, another town or area where there's not so much diversity?
Yeah, I mean, living in the city is a challenge, and working for the city is also a challenge because of the diversity, for example. But the one thing I want to appreciate here is the professionalism in our workforce. It's not easy to cater for everybody's differences, I will tell you that. But the city has strived to make sure that the professional work we put in can accommodate the diversity. That's extremely important. And then also the issue of service delivery, we strive at the city. I'm not in the space to talk about what other people do, but we strive at the city to accommodate everyone because, for example, in the museum where I work for, one exhibition that we do, we educate our communities on traditional medicine, for example, just to deal with something else. But what I'm trying to say is that we want to teach people on how our elderly communities used to cure themselves in this space using herbs, for example.
Yeah.
So that if you do not understand, if you come, for example, from Europe, for example, if you can understand that or you can learn something from it, it creates a sense of understanding of the diversity, a sense of appreciation of what other people have done. And we have quite a lot of exhibitions that also try to unify everybody. Yeah. So like our small little exhibition on the prehistory of Nambia, we tell you about when this building was not here, you appreciate like, okay, and you can see that who was here, for example, the Hereros and the Namas, and the issues of the workers that I alluded to. So that now on, we do those things deliberately to open up your appreciations of diversity. Yeah.
Of course, with the fast development of the technological developments and the digital advancements, there has been fears that the concept of museums might fade out. What do you think is the best way to preserve the concept of museums? I know you spoke of the education and awareness you spoke of during the Heritage Week, exhibitions that were done to just educate the community, but what is it that we need to do to preserve this concept?
No, the museums and technology they move hand in hand. It's a fear for those that do not know, but for us, we're in the industry, we understand that this media or this medium is a supplement to what we do. I will give you an example. In our institution, for example, we used technology to make ourselves relevant, because museums cannot operate in isolation. Because if you are not relevant to your communities, then who are you? Who are you serving for? The youth, for example, is one of our biggest clients. Because we make sure that we accommodate them. They like gadgets, so we included that in there. And we also want to speak about issues of relevance. For example, mushroomings of houses, inability to service land, for example. Those are some of the things that we think about. We are also developing exhibition where we call institutions that grew with the city, for example. For example, your phone. We want to have an exhibition on phones, for example, where you can understand that in the old days the phone was that big, or the recorder was that huge like a suitcase. Now, so people when they come, we have, for example, one of the biggest recorders in our, and I always tell the young ones, just imagine nowadays you use your phone, which is small, but in the olden days you had to carry this, and they go like, oh wow. You see, so what I'm trying to say is that technology advancement in our industry is a supplement to what we do. And we use that to the best of our ability to make sure that we become relevant and also reach our target market.
Yeah. You've been in this industry for many years. I'm sure you've seen the decline in numbers as far as walk-ins at museums is concerned. It's very rare. I can't even remember the last time I walked into a museum compared to my days when I was in school where we used to frequent museums. what would you attribute that to? I know you mentioned earlier on that technological advancements, you see it as a supplement to your work, not as a threat. But what is it that needs to be done to ensure that the communities make use of these facilities?
No, one thing first, like I indicated, we have to be relevant and we have to market our institutions, otherwise we die. We have seen it scientifically that if you are not relevant and you do not market the institution, you basically die. Because if I tell you, for example, an example of Jan van Riebeeck, who is that? How is that related to me? I mean, and then nowadays people talk about the liberation struggle. Yes, it's a liberation, but how is that related to me? So that I can go and understand. And that is the core question that we try to address in the institutions that we work for, because relevance is extremely important. And the use of media and technology is extremely important. Otherwise, you just die. So when we develop these exhibitions, we have to think about who our market is. Who do we want to invite? We have a lot of international tourists, I will tell you, and a lot of old people that come. But we also, at the back of our mind, have exhibitions strategically designed for the young ones, for the current generation, so that it makes sense to them. Because like the exhibition I was talking about of both the labor, contract labor exhibition and the one that we took at the emergency services, we have a lot of people that come in and say, oh, I didn't know we have 4 emergency stations in the city, and what do they do? And then when you educate them like that, they're like, oh, and then they go out and they appreciate the work of these colleagues in uniform. The issue of the contract labor, for example, if you think about KCAC, the Katutura Center at the back, most people didn't know that it was a compound where our elders used to sleep in a small space, 4 on banked beds. And when they come into the space and they learn, most of them want even to go back and look at the space and realize, and they appreciate the space. That is what our work does. We are now in a position to also educate our people on issues of Katutura housing. You will not, the houses in the olden days were as small as most of the sitting rooms now. But it was somebody's house who had to work for that house, who had to pay for that house. And who had to walk from wherever they walked and get on a bus, paid for the bus. And so our strategic idea is to educate strategically different communities and also to bring those communities into the space. That is our target, because we realize that there's no point in being a museum if you are not relevant to your communities. Not at all. You can be relevant to other people outside the continent, but if the people inside do not have any. That's why you saw even the activities that we had last weekend. We had the traditional games, for example. People were so excited to reminisce how they used to play old games, for example, Owela, Black is Mark Fall, things like that. Some of them even came to me and said, wow, now I remember my high school days. But these guys are like what, in the early 20s, in the mid-30s. They're like, but you would see the happiness in their faces. So for us, that is what we are doing most to make sure that we become relevant.
And just as you wrap up, I know the issue of resourcing such facilities is always a challenge. I mean, there are many competing interests that the city should cater for. Just from that aspect, how do you balance these different needs of the city? And also just in closing, on your part, what can we as the public expect when we walk into the doors there at that facility which you and your team meant?
Strategically at the museum, I think politically it's a strategy that was used to appoint politicians that have an interest in heritage. We have a committee that is headed by Dr. Mbanda, for example. He studied political science and he's a young politician. So he heads with other colleagues, he heads the Heritage Committee, which is tasked basically at the political level to make sure that the issues of heritage are taken into consideration. They are they are also advanced and they are sustainably advanced. So that for us is extremely important. So that is a good thing to us. And I think most institutions should start thinking like that at that level. You need to get people that can advance your work, that have an interest in your work. And also the second thing is we strategically engage colleagues all over the world to see what they are doing and how we can do things together. Germany nowadays, almost every year we go to Germany and they come back to us because of our history. And we talk at that level and we make sure that we engage and we also learn from them and they learn from us. The other part that you spoke about, when you come to our institution, we are a vibrant institution, that I can tell you. We are a relevant institution. We know we have done enough. I've been in the city for almost 13 years now. We have done a lot of work and we are doing a lot of work to make sure that we remain relevant to our people and to our tourists. So we do quite a lot of research. There's a lot of underground work that goes in there. When we host events, for example, it's because we strategically think this is what we need to do as an institution. And that's why I'm saying if most of those that did not visit, and then believe you me, when you walk out of there, you will say, oh, I learned one or two things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dr. Nambadi, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, man.
It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Well, to our viewers, that's it from the Evening Review team. Thank you for staying tuned and have a pleasant evening. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place.